Okay, welcome to Jolly Cooperation. Almost forgot the name of my own podcast there. My name is Jeff Smowtown, and I'm here with two of the best and brightest of the Soulsborne community. I've got Sin and JSF with me. So, Sin, why don't you introduce yourself and what you're all about?
Hi, I'm Sin from youtube.com/Sinclair Lore. And we have lore videos and Soulsborne-like podcasts on the channel, as well as podcasts covering other games, retro games, anime, cryptids, and Reborn.
Cryptids? Yeah. You've got videos on cryptids?
Yeah. We have
I
like
think 3.
7.
Which cryptids?
Jesus.
Oh, like a lot of them.
Oh,
Like Mothman, Loch Ness,
Loch Ness.
the usual
It's
suspects.
near me. The classics. And where can people find you on your social media, etc.? Stealing your podcast introduction.
There's twitter.com/Sinclair Lore. There's twitch.tv/Sinclair Lore. There's youtube.com/Sinclair Lore. Is there anything else, Richard?
No, I think that's it. You've got a Redbubble store.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what that is, though. Don't buy
Cool.
from there, it's overpriced. It's not worth it.
Great.
Great. JSF, Richie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi, I'm Richard. You may know me from the JSF channel, which I don't really do stuff with that much anymore because I've been doing stuff with Sin, and that's why we're both on this together.
Marvelous.
And you can find me at the same places you can find Sin. If you want to see me on Twitter, I am just Richard_Pilbeam, which is Pilbeam.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So today we are going to be doing a Bloodborne podcast chat analysis on Kos, Mother Kos, and the fishing hamlet. So I can essentially steal both of your bright ideas and formulate it into a lore video, which I'll post on my channel and not credit either of you. So with that being said, let's just start about Mother Kos when we encounter her in the hunter's dream, nightmare, whatever, the hamlet. She is dead already. She's dead on the beach. So,
Yeah,
Richie,
she's dead.
what do you think happened to her?
Well, this was a bone of contention, I guess, when the old hunters came out, because it came out with a strategy guide. And the strategy guide specified that the hunters had killed Kos, and this was a strategy guide that had been written, like, in collaboration with From Software. Like, they had access to notes and things about what happened. But at the same time, when you receive an item from Kos's child called the Kos Parasite, and that says, like, it's worded as, when the body of Kos washed ashore. So that led to, okay, well, was Kos dead the whole time? And then there is a thing in Japanese whaling village folklore, which the fishing hamlet's very closely patterned after. It's clearly like a whaling hamlet. There's oil and things there. That, if a village is doing badly and a dead whale washes up, then because that whale can provide like meat and fat and it'll have fish in its stomach, the dead whale is worshipped as a god by the village. It's like this is a thing that sacrificed itself to keep our village going. So that I was wondering, well, is that what's going on with Kos? Is Kos like a dead great one that washed ashore and they just sort of like worshipped the corpse and they sort of absorbed the parasites and things from the corpse? So there was a lot of like, is that what's happening? Or like, did the hunters kill Kos? And we really had no idea until quite recently, because you will know that when you're in the hamlet, you can hear all these people talking in the huts. It's like, it's women who are like, they're chanting like a curse. It has like a rhythm to it and it rhymes. And this is the curse that's put on the hunters.
Yeah.
And because it's all overlapping, we had no idea like what we could make out certain words like cause and mother and things. We couldn't figure out exactly what it was. But now that the game has been dumped and we have access to those like raw files that are not overlapping each other anymore, we can listen to them, and the women in the huts very clearly say, "Cause we beckoned, now cause is dead." So,
right,
pretty clear, I think now. Yeah.
So they're saying it was
They
alive.
beckoned. The impression that you get from all this is that they beckoned Cause to like out of the ocean. The people in the hamlet beckoned Cause out of the ocean, and then the hunters killed Cause. And part of the prayer that the women in the hamlet are doing is they're saying like, "Cause we beckoned, now Cause is dead. Forgive us." So like they are complicit in the death of Cause, and I guess the impression that I get from it is that the hunters in Bergenworth showed up and they were like pretending to be, like helpful, like please take us to. We're interested. We're scientists. We want to learn about this thing. And when she was beckoned, that's when they turned and they like gutted Cause, and then they massacred the hamlet on the way out. Yeah.
Yeah. Sin, do you have anything to add about the basic premise of that?
Well, it could be that, but I think it could also be that when they say cause we have beckoned and cause is dead, forgive us and curses upon the fiends, cause we beckoned, dear cause no more, forgiveness upon us, curse the fiends. If it's more like the whole story in these lyrics, it could kind of mean like that. It could still mean, I think, that cause washed ashore and cause is dead, and the curse is like defiling the body of cause and taking her child,
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Or it could be that they beckoned Cos and then the hunters killed her.
It could.
I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that. I'm just
I think
devil's advocating.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the hunters killed Cos, but looking at that, you could also look at it.
Yeah.
So my third kind of way of looking at it would be, and I'm not sure exactly which one I agree with, is that she just washed ashore, and we're not really sure how she died. Could be that she was killed by the parasites that were inside of her, or something a little bit more benign. But there's a lot of options. But that key bit of lore is the Kos parasite, where you say the carcass washed ashore, whether that be she was whaled prior to that, or she was killed before, or as Sin says, that she was beckoned and then killed.
Yeah.
I mean, the basic premise is, and we'll just kind of get this out of the way, is obviously based in some ways on the story The Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft. The premise is, I'm not saying the story is, where it's a ruined town in Massachusetts, MS, and the people have discovered what they call the Deep Ones. The difference being is that they reproduce with these Deep Ones and become the hybrid offspring, rather than being the parasites that kind of come from Kos and infect them. So my next question would be, is that if the villagers killed Kos, what evidence would be for that? Is it just the whaling aspects of the town, Richie? Is that why you've come to that?
Well, it definitely looks to be a whaling town, but when you arrive, you realize that the whaling parts of the town are no longer, like, operative. Like, there are large boats that you could use to whale, but they're all sunk off the coast, they're all ruined. And there's a large area that's like a parasite hatchery, where they have got these things that we know these things lived inside of Kos. They're these strange slug things, and they appear to just be growing, like breeding them. Growing them from eggs in this like, looks like a repurposed, like a place you would gut fish. Like a repurposed fishery, They're growing them there, so whether Kos arrived living or dead, her presence has transformed the town, how it functioned. You brought up Innsmouth. Another basis for this story is Junji Ito's The Thing That Drifted to Shore. Okay. Which is, it's clearly visually referenced with the way that you see Kos. It's a comic book. They reproduce almost exactly like the with Kos's corpse. The thing that drifted ashore is about a sea monster that is washed up onto this beach, and when it's cut open, inside of it are all these people who disappeared in a shipwreck. And they're still alive, but they're completely insane and they just scream. So not necessarily the plot, but the imagery of like this sort of gutted sea monster. Also the imagery of this like kind of insane sort of nude thing crawling out of it and just screaming is taken from the thing that drifted ashore. So it's... Yeah, Ito is a big influence on Bloodborne that I think is... people are like... It's overlooked because people assume it's just straight up Lovecraftian, but like other Ito things would be the snail women in the Hamlet are very closely like... That's taken from Uzumaki. I think Uzumaki's probably the best known Ito work, but that's just about people turning into snails, basically. And also, like, but it's other things as well, like the lighthouse in the Hamlet is taken from Ito's work. The character of Mikolash is lifted from a chapter of Uzumaki, almost like exactly.
Interesting. I didn't actually realize that.
And also, there's like other imagery as well. The vermin is these are not like exclusive to Ito, but the fact they're all in the same game makes you think, okay, you probably got it from there. Like the imagery of the vermin, the obsession with umbilical cords, that's all in Uzumaki as well. Right down to the town in Uzumaki is cursed because it's built above this ruins of another civilization, which is of course what happens with Yharnam. So
fascinating. And so, do we agree with the Pale Blunt Hunt in that this is kind of the first exposure that the Healing Church has to... Sorry, not the Healing Church. The scholars at Byrgenwerth have with the Great Ones? Is this the first direct one? And I know that's suggested by the fact that their research hall seems to be focused on an aquatic connection between the Great Ones, given that could be the only Great One that they've encountered.
Yeah, it's the first direct encounter, yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you think as well, Sin? Do you think this is the origin of that?
Probably. I mean, they did go to Chalice dungeons, but I'm not sure what they could have encountered there. Maybe a Briatus?
Well, they encountered the slugs, the augurs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but then they sort of follow we were talking about this when we talked about the choir, but like...
The choir, yeah.
The impression you get is they went into the chalices and they found the traces of the Great Ones. They found like the phantasms there. And because of that, it looks like they knew what to look for. And that's probably what led them to the Hamlet, is that they were sort of searching for like evidence and they realized, oh, okay, there's this place that's like, it's a fishing town, but they just seem to grow weird slug things there. And the people there, they look like they're kind of transforming. So that's probably a sign that they're in contact with the Great Ones there, and that's why they went to investigate what was happening. And
that the corpse of Kos was the first physical evidence of a Great One. Maybe they were peripherally aware of these beings.
It looks like they were aware of Ibriatus, but they didn't find her until much later on.
Yeah. Excellent. And so, getting on to the matter of the Byrgenwerth scholars turning up, do you think it's as simple as they got word of this event and turned up essentially looking for connections with the Great Ones?
Well, the thing is, we don't know very much about the Hamlet itself because of the way we encounter it, because we encounter it in the Hunter's Nightmare.
Yeah.
So it's not immediately clear, like, we know it happened, like, in terms of causality, it was, like, the first thing that happened. But we don't know, like, where it is. Like, presumably it must be on the coast somewhere, and you can kind of see, like, if you stand way, way up the top of Upper Cathedral Ward and look out, you can see that Yharnam does appear to be on the coast. There's you can see an ocean sort of going off into the distance with nothing that we can see on the other side, so... Presumably Yharnam itself is coastal, so this hamlet is probably, like, near there, but We don't know exactly, like, where it was. We don't know how they found it. We don't see any, like, it can't be that far away because they were able to go there, but...
Yeah, we can presume that their influence was pretty strong at this point, and they'll have just got wind of it and sent hunters there to investigate. So, Sin, what would be your way of describing the chain of events that happened with the hunters arriving in Bergenworth?
Before or after Ludwig killed Maria?
Yeah, after.
The chain of events that led to Bergenworth?
Yeah, so what happened with the hunters and the fishing hamlet? What did they do? What led to Maria throwing away her beloved weapon and everything?
Well, I guess, I'm guessing Bergenworth started exploring the chalices, like Richie mentioned, found something there that led them to the knowledge of the existence of the Great Ones. I don't know how they got word of the fishing hamlet. Maybe Twitter, but they realized that there's a...
Instagram selfies.
There we go.
Corpse,
yeah. They realized that somewhere there's a village that seems to be in contact or worshipping a Great One. And, as any rational human being would do, they sent out a bunch of killers to go investigate. And,
and they killed people.
Yeah.
So, speaking about the hunters that were sent, so we don't know how many hunters sent, but amongst them, we have to take as more or less fact that two of the main hunters that went were Lady Maria and her mentor German, being two of the kind of first hunters.
Yeah.
And so Maria, as we understand it, is one of Canehurst.
Well,
I mean, I know
she's
we're kind of
Canehurst adjacent, at least.
Yeah.
Yes, she's a distant relative with maybe some tainted blood in her, which allows her to use the blood arts. And
it says that she's a distant relative of Annalise, or the Undead Queen, and it says that like her hunter garb is from Canehurst, but they don't really pin down where exactly Maria herself is from. Yeah.
And if we take Canehurst to be a kind of medieval Germanic royal family, the amount of relatives for these type of families was huge. So she could be extremely, extremely distant, who never lived in the castle at all.
Yeah.
But it says a trick sword originated in, when we're talking about her weapon Rakuyo, a trick sword originated in the same country as the Canehurst Chikage.
Yeah.
That's an interesting turn of phrase. So does that mean that they're talking about where the Canehurst royal family is from, or are they talking about the fact that these weapons were fashioned after an art of a different country and the Canehurst just adopted it?
Yeah, they're talking about the Hirata estate.
I think they are specifying that because you get in the DLC you get Yamamura, who's he's described as like a wandering swordsman from the east, and he literally has a Chikage, and
so they just took the weaponry from that land and fashioned it into their
own.
Think
that's it's kind of confusing because the Shadows of Yharnam and the Keepers of the Old Lords also have what appear to be katanas.
Oh yeah, the Shadows of Yharnam.
Yeah. I guess you would know Dark Souls 2, like, the story better than a lot of people because you do Souls lore, but, like, Sir Alon, the story in Crown of the... I think it's a riff on that, where, like, the story being that there is a medieval, very kind of European place, and then into this comes the wandering man from the east, and he's got these incredible swords.
Who's a samurai-esque warrior with different
samurai shows
and different way of fighting.
Yeah, but importantly, he shows up and he's got a sword that's like no one has ever seen a sword this sharp before. So this country then adopts that as the standard for making. So you end up with the Iron Keep, where you've got it's drawn from like the imagery it's kind of medieval Europe, but they all have katanas and they've kind of adopted a samurai kind of style of fighting.
Yeah, and then you see the way the Alon Knights fight, and when you fight Alon himself, you can see that he's their style of fighting. The sliding across the floor and things like that.
Yeah, it's very, very samurai-like.
Yeah.
But this is happening in the same area as just, like, these medieval European-style knights as well, so...
But Canehurst, that definitely holds true, because Canehurst, I can't remember which item it is, they talk about the way in which they kill their enemies, and that it's a style of decadent art to them. And so definitely taking weapons from other countries that they think fits their flamboyant style of murder, essentially, is definitely possible.
And the church end up doing the same thing where they find the Rite of Palace and they try to make their own kind of bootleg version of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Maria, let's just say she was related to Canehurst, but we presume she doesn't like the way in which they fight, because it says in the Rakuyo she frowns upon bloodblaze. So we can take that Lady Maria is someone who wants to distance herself from her heritage.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that's her character? Would you agree, Sunnyville? That she's a woman trying to define her own legacy.
Yeah.
And so her and Garmin come together, and at this point we can presume maybe that, given how much she looks up to Garmin, that at this point the hunters hadn't done anything as dishonourable as this. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe.
Well, nothing this bad, yeah. The problem is, like, it's never really established what exactly the hunters are or where they come from.
Yeah, and that these two were the first, and that she admired him.
Yeah. The confusing part is, like, the hunter's workshop it's inside of Yharnam. And, we know, like, that the beast blood, Fumarian blood, was always kind of underneath Yharnam.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that like, it's possible that there were always to a point, like, beasts in Yharnam, but not a plague like there is now. So they may have always been, like, beast hunters whose job it was to keep Yharnam
safe. Police, secret police. Well, I think in the Pale Blood Hunt, Redgrave suggests they were essentially secret police at the beginning who were meant to cut down early stages. I'm not sure this is correct. I'm just saying this is, I think, what Redgrave says.
I think
they become public with Ludwig. They become a public police force after the Scourge in Old Yharnam, and that
I don't know about them always being, like, a secret thing. I think there was always just, like, you know, there's there would be, like, a beast singular occasionally. Yeah. So you would, like, be better call on Old Man Gurman to deal with this.
Yeah,
it wasn't an outbreak. Well, it was spread as an outbreak through the Ashen.
Yeah, the healing church are the ones that make it into a full-on outbreak, and they start. They're also the reason that you get things like the cleric beast, rather than just
It's like in Resident Evil, using the Z virus to try and cure something, and in fact, all you do is you spread this virus through the blood.
Yeah, the healing church make a lot more sense if you think of them as, like, Umbrella Corporation rather than a church. Yeah,
that's what I think of them.
Yeah. So, like, they become a militant police force with Ludwig. It's like the church sort of fold them in. They abandon Gurman's way of doing things. Yeah, the honourable Spartans. Yeah, and Yamamura has that prayer where he's like, "You are the blades of the church."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, my take on the Hunters Bergenworth alliance is just that we know Bergenworth were going to the Chalices. They were, like, exploring them for a long time prior to the Hamlet, and I assumed, okay, Bergenworth are a bunch of academics. They're not going to be great in a fight, so they probably just, like, made contact with, like, Gurman and the Hunters, and, like, we need basically security for when we're doing these Chalice dives. Yeah,
as much as Gurman's an interesting character, he doesn't seem, forgive me, Gurman, it seems like an intellectual or anything like that. He just seems like he's a master at his craft, which is hunting.
Yeah, and he's very loyal as well. He seems to be following, like, his whole thing is he's staying in the dream because that's what Lawrence wants.
Yeah, he seems like he's a loyalist to Lawrence.
Yeah, he's similar, I guess, to Wolf in Sekiro. Yes. Like, this, my duty is this, so that is what I will do. And he's not really thinking about it. Yeah.
So the reason I speak about Maria is because I think it's interesting looking at her psychological state going into the village. So I think at this point, going into the village, she truly would do anything that Gurman asked her to. And Gurman, in turn, would do anything that his master would do, just like you said there. So I think she follows him into this massacre, and then afterwards is extremely regretful of it, because she's trying so desperately to prove she's something different, And she's found this new life to separate herself from her old bloodline. I think that's her psychological reasoning for initially taking part in this. I'd say. Do either of you have anything to add to Maria, or do you think that's kind of a bit accurate about her?
I think it's like you said. She was doing what Gurman wanted her to do, and he was doing what Willem wanted him to do. So again, it's that like honor-bound thing. And then she reaches a point psychologically where like
it's so disgusting.
She can't reconcile what she's done with her honor, and it's like, yeah. So she just has to turn her back on the whole thing.
So with that being said, when they arrive at the fishing hamlet, how do you envisage it going down, Sin? Like, how do you think this all happened? Do you think they just turned out and massacred everyone, or do you think that it was an investigation, or what?
Well, I guess...
How do you imagine it in your head canon?
Well, I guess they showed up and they're talking to the priest. They're like, hey, lead us to Kos. And the priest is like, no. And then they sort of beat him up, and then they kept on going, and the villagers are like, leave us alone, and they started massacring them. I don't feel like there was much, how would you say it? Tact, that was involved going into the village, personally.
Yeah.
There's
sorry, go ahead, Sam.
I'm just thinking about the whole Maria in the village thing, like, because it is true that she doesn't enjoy blood arts or something like that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's right.
Later in life, she was very like affectionate toward the research hall patients. So she is an empathetic person, or has the capacity to be empathetic. So I wonder if she came to the village and whether she, participated in the massacre, or whether she was like, I'm out, whether she tried to maybe, I guess she didn't, but in my headcanon it's like, maybe at some point she tried to be like, no, Gurman, you don't do that. Or... So
you think she maybe didn't even do any and she just straight away threw Yharhar'ghul down the well?
Because we don't ever, like... we don't know at what point she actually split from Gurman. Because it could have been, like, as soon as the Hamlet thing was over, she may have just said, I'm out.
Or as soon as the Hamlet thing started, she was like, no.
Because Because, like, it's possible that, like, I guess going into how I would picture it, it's possible that, like, she didn't know what exactly was going down. Like, because the way that they say, like, we beckoned Kos, because it could have been, like, Willem and Lawrence and Gurman and Maria showing up and them asking, like, hey, like, we are scientists, we are mystics, we want to see, like, the god in the ocean.
Like
playing
a game, essentially.
Yeah, no intent of, like, actual, like, harm. Being, like, obviously lying about it, but saying, like, we just want to see the thing. And then when they were led to where Kos came to the shore, and that's when Gurman, like, pulls out the scythe and guts her. Yeah. And at that point, they end up fighting their way back out of the hamlet. So they're surrounded at that point. Definitely. And it's possible that, like... Or even, like, they said, like, there was, like, they may not have come there with the intent of actually killing anyone. It may have been, like, give us Kos. And then when, like, negotiations broke down, that's when the violence broke out. But, like, it could almost have been with Maria, like, it could have been preservation to a degree. Like, she didn't realize she was going to get attacked by this, like, village full of fish people. And maybe that's why, like, she did it to stay alive, and now she wishes she hadn't. Yeah.
In fairness, the giant fish people are extremely triggering. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that, like, Gurman is the one that kills Kos.
Oh, and I think he would have no issue. I don't say he's a bad person, but I think he's got no issue reconciling his morality with his duty at all. He would do anything as long as he's completing his duty.
Yeah,
in a way. And what's interesting, and I'll get both your take on this, is that obviously, let's just say they first came to investigate. And then they saw the corpse of Kos and whatever they gutted Kos. But also, they investigate the villagers themselves, correct? Because the villagers have changed. Like in Innsmouth, they've changed.
Yeah.
And so there's the accursed brew item description that says skull of a local from violated fishing village, which is very interesting. The inside of the skull was forcibly searched for eyes, as evidenced by the innumerable scratches and indentations.
Yeah.
No wonder the skull became stewed with curses, which the curse thing we'll get onto again in a little bit. They who offer baneful chants weep with them as one in a trance. So that last bit is what Sin. The chants that you hear from the fish people, that's them weeping, offering baneful chants.
Yeah, the Hamlet priest also says, like, I think he just says that exact line.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does, yeah. He listened for baneful chants, a call to the bloodless, wherever they be.
Yeah.
So, Sin, do you think that after the massacre regarding Kos, do you think that then they kind of sealed off the village, and the word violated meaning that they just turned over the entire village, cut open all the villagers, and essentially used this entire village for their purposes of research? Is that how you read this?
I don't know if they used the entire village, or just maybe the body of Kos, but definitely the orphan. Oh.
What do you think it means, Richie?
Well, that they like, I think it's just to specify that, like, this wasn't just like they killed the people in the village. It was something more like it was a violation. They did something like
they dehumanized them by treating them like research objects.
Yeah, but like even more than that. Like, this wasn't just like it wasn't like old Yharnam where they just like burned it and a lot of people died. This was full on, like, they actually angered, like, the primal forces of the world. They did something really, really bad that they can't ever be free from. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a stain on all hunters to the left.
Yeah, to the point where anyone who takes on the mantle of the hunter, even if they had nothing to do with the hamlet, it still weighs on them, and they can't escape it.
Yeah, because everyone kills everyone in the world, and it's such a brutal thing to say. Especially in this world. It's a brutal and dark world. People kill people anyway. But this went beyond simple murder, simple hunt. And so the inside of the skull was forcibly searched for eyes. So this, to me, is very archaic in the kind of Bergenworth intellectual way of thinking. So this goes back to him lining your skull with eyes, or your brain with eyes. So to me, insight and lining yourself with eyes isn't, I mean, a lot of people do say it to be literal eyes, and in some cases it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's obviously something more ethereal than that, and I think that this is a symbol of really early thinking about having insight, and obviously they search the inside of their skulls because they have had contact with Kos, and this is a very exciting opportunity for the scholars. I just want to get your take on that part of it. Like, what are they doing to these villagers? What is the point?
They're being basically just Victorian scientists.
Mm-hmm.
They're just saying, well, okay, what these people clearly, like, there is something about them that makes them closer to the Great Ones than us. So we will just empirically look at their bodies and say, okay, like, parts of their brain are, physically, there's parts of their head are structured differently. Parts of their, like, their bodies are different. That we have to figure out what it is about them that, anything that is different about these people is what is making them closer to the Great Ones. So we have to figure out what that... And this is like we talked about Lovecraft. And like, the difference... Like, in a lot of ways, Bloodborne is a deliberate inversion of Lovecraft. Because in Lovecraftian work, Lovecraft himself, not the people who write in his tradition, who are obviously quite diverse, but like, within... What Lovecraft is doing is when you see, like, the deep ones, or like the ghouls or something, they have deviated from the norm. Like, they're a failure. Like, you're not supposed... There's something wrong with you if you're like this. Whereas within Bloodborne, if you are far from human, that might actually be... it can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on, like, you could be a hyper-advanced, like, cosmic beast, but you could also be, like, a werewolf.
A slavering
so
wolf,
it's a lot more, like, open to sort of, like, hybridization, and the body changing are not necessarily bad. So that's what they're interested in.
Yeah.
So it's almost an inversion of, like, when I was talking about Victorian scientists who would look at people they were colonizing and say, oh, okay, well, look at these people's heads are different, these people's bodies are different, and that's why, like, we are superior. But Bergenworth almost do the opposite of that, and they're saying the differences between us and these people, that's why, in a sense, these people are superior, and we should try to almost mimic that.
Yeah, and crack open their skulls to see what makes them tick. Okay. And so the main core of what I wanted to talk about, and this is what I'm going to talk about in my video, and I've spoken to Sin about this before, is this event to me. So you go backwards through the Hunter's Nightmare, is how I interpret it. You go, I mean, the first, exactly. And you start in Yharnam essentially, and then you go through into the research hall. And the research hall is a step after what happens in the Hishing Hamlet. Yeah. And then you reach the Fishing Hamlet.
Yeah, Simon outright says, like, this is the place the nightmare sprouted from.
Exactly. And so, as I've mentioned to both of you before, what I see at this event, and I've always seen it as this, and it's really important to me, is I see it as like the Christian concept of the original sin and the idea of blood curses. And so, from that, do we think that the priest speaking, and I'll read a little bit of his lines here, I feel his lines are really poignant, and when you enter this area, the first thing you hear is this chanting from this priest, and the lines are really important, and so it reads like, it goes like this: Bergenworth, blasphemous murderers, blood-crazed fiends, atonement for the wretches by the wrath of Mother Kos. And then it says, lay the curse of blood upon them, and their children, and their children's children, for evermore. Each wretched birth will plunge each child into a lifetime of misery. So, they seem to be, apart from obviously cursing them out in a just kind of normative sense, they seem to be wanting this curse to be so effective that it forever affects everyone in that bloodline, meaning, obviously, that's the meaning of a blood curse, is that it passes down generationally. So, Sin, what are your thoughts on this as a curse that actually has an effect in the game, rather than it just being a nice bit of dialogue from the fishing priest Hamlet? Do we think there's actually something more to what I'd call the wrath of Kos?
I think Richie would be better suited to answer that, because he has a lot of... No, it's true, because you know a lot about the curse and all that stuff.
Okay,
well, I was talking, we were talking before we recorded about how one of the issues with Bloodborne is, like, they don't exactly lay out the specifics of how many curses there actually are, and what exactly is going on, because, this is not like a complaint about the writing, it's just, like, the concept of curses just sort of floats around, and you can roughly figure it out, but, like, people talk about Yharnam being cursed, but also the hunters are cursed. Is that the same curse as Yharnam cursed because it's built above the Pthumerian Labyrinth? Is that the same thing as the Curse of Kos, because the Curse of Kos happens later on, etc., etc.? So, the Curse of Kos is what you said. It is, like, what happens is, because the hunters did this thing, if you take on the script calls it things like the onus of the hunt, or like carrying the torch of the hunt. If you take that on, you also take the curse on, but that's, like, it doesn't matter that you weren't involved in the Hamlet raid yourself. The fact that you're carrying on the legacy of the people that did it means you also inherit that legacy as well.
The sins of your forefathers, in a sense, essentially.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, the original sin concept in Christianity is you inherit the sins. We're apparently, according to Christianity, we're all born inherently with sin. And the original sin being, of course, the sin of Eve taking the apple in the Garden of Eden. But there's other sins, like after that, there's the murder of Cain murdering his brother Abel. Yeah. And these are all curses that we all inherit when we're born. And to me, this is what this is here. And blood curse, obviously, more important in Bloodborne than any other game. But that, when, like you say, when you become a hunter, it's quite opaque as to how you become a hunter. there seems to be some kind of blood transfusion involved, whatever that blood transfusion is. And so it is
it's just the moon presence.
Moon presence.
Well, my take on that is that, like, what happens is you get the transfusion, you black out, you go into this kind of weird fugue state, and then messengers crawl on you. And then you hear the doll say, "Oh, you found yourself a hunter," meaning she's talking to the messengers. From that point onward, you have the hunter's mark, like you're marked by it. And since the messengers are things in the dream, where the moon presence is, I just assume that, like, what happens is, when you black out, the moon presence reaches out in the form of the messengers, and it's just like, okay, you're now marked by me, you're a hunter, you have to do this thing to be released from the... now you belong to me, you're going to the dream, and you're going to fulfill the, the contract, and then I'll release you at the end of it via gunman.
He'll cut your contract.
The blood transfusion...
Yeah, he literally will just,
the blood transfusion seems to be more like... I guess they transfuse special blood, so it's more like a signal to the moon presence, like, hey, somebody else is using the blood again. Do you think they'd be a good hunter? And the moon presence like, yeah.
And what's interesting about it is that you have, like, Eileen, and we know Eileen has been to the dream because she talks about the doll. And then you have other people, and you also have, so, like, she's been freed from that contract, but at the same time, she will still go blood drunk. Right. So if we take blood drunkenness as, like, part of the curse of Kos, even after you've been released from the dream, like, that is still on you. You still have that, like, bloodthirst.
Yeah, because it carries on. It's a curse that
well, this is random, but I was kind of confused about the whole contract thing a while back, where I'm like, okay, so you have a contract with the moon presence about the hunter thing, fine. But how does the blood minister know about it? Like, did he type it up by the order of the moon presence? And Richie pointed out to me, he's like, well, Sin, the first contract with the blood minister where there's a paper, it's probably like more of a consent form. Just the blood minister getting your permission.
It's a different... This is the confusing part, because they call that he says, let's draw up a contract, but then they also refer to, like, the contract with the Grey Ones, but they're two different contracts. Yeah.
But is he a real normal person, the blood minister? I've always wondered this as well, Sin. Is he an agent?
No, I think he's just doing his job, Gotta pay the bills.
He's just a dude.
Just a chap.
Yeah.
Linking up blood.
Yeah, well, he's just like one of... You run into a bunch of them, just like those old guys in wheelchairs.
Yeah, the wheelchairs who sometimes have guns.
Yeah, he's just one of them.
And what else is interesting? I know I'm taking you further away again, but you mentioned that bit where the messengers come up. And it's really interesting, that symbolism at the beginning. Do you think the bit with the beast coming out and then burning away is your initial rejection of becoming just a mindless beast with the ingestion of blood? Is that what that's supposed to signify?
That's what it is. And one thing that I think is lost, because there's obviously a big gap between the beginning and the end of the game, is that you get this, like, flash, and then the beast burns up. If you take in the 3 chords and the moon presence tries to grab you, you get the same flash. So it's like you're rejecting her as well.
Ah, interesting. So that's you rejecting certain aspects, taking control.
Well, it's like you start off the game that presumably the moon presence herself is what makes you immune to the beast plague through the mess, because the werewolf burns up and then the messengers crawl up. So I just assumed that was the moon presence going like, no beast plague for you, you're mine now. And then at the end, she will try to consume you, but when she tries to do it, if you've taken in those 3 chords, you get the same reaction. She's rejected by you. Like, she can't control you anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah. Interesting. So, I'm just going back into the things that the Hamlet priest says, and there's a cut content line as well.
There's a lot.
Yeah. There's one that's really interesting, where you would have obviously given the Yharnam stone, which is now completely pointless, to the priest.
The priest,
And what he says is an implication to this relationship between mothers and their children, which not a new theme in Bloodborne, admittedly.
No.
But what I'd be interested in hearing is why you think this Yharnam stone is so... I know it was cut from the game, but why was it be important to the priest and Kos?
Because Kos has had her child stolen. So by the Yharnam stone, like, for people who don't know, it's very clearly, like, the body of Yharnam's child, Murgo, who has died. It's like a stillbirth that's sort of petrified. Okay. And I'm assuming that, like, because Kos is angry because her child was taken from her, if you offered Murgo to her, she's, like, placated, like, I have a child again. You've, like, repaired sort of the damage that was done by giving her a child back. Yeah.
And it's that classic line, they always yearn for a surrogate, essentially. So that could be her surrogate, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, that's... Yeah.
So why do you think that was cut?
I really don't know, because, like, there's more to that than maybe a lot of people realize, because, like, that NPC who takes the stone from you, he's also, like, he has other variants. There's, like, a variant of him in the research hall, things like that.
Oh, okay.
Because, like, the DLC itself, it began as 2 DLCs, and then they stitched them together later on. So and a lot of things got shuffled around a fair bit.
The original Nightmare area would have been 1, and then the Hamlet and Research Hall would have been another? Or was that
well, from what we can tell, it would have... The Research Hall was 1, and it was just, like, straight up Upper Cathedral Ward. It wasn't in the Nightmare or anything.
Right.
And then... That's why, like, if you go there, it doesn't... Nothing seems out of the ordinary, really. Like, it doesn't seem nightmarish. It's just, like, this is just a lab that we can't get to normally. Yeah. And the other one would have been the prison and then the Hamlet as one kind of area.
Oh, okay.
Which is why, like, Brador follows you from the prison to the Hamlet, but he doesn't follow you to the Research Hall at any point. It's like...
Ah, right, I see.
That's... Yeah, but, I mean, like, so much was... And the whole, like, the Hunter's Nightmare, the reason that's all Yharnam assets is because, like, that was made after they stitched it together. So they were like...
And then we started for landing.
We'll bridge them by just, like... Yeah, we have a bunch of, like, Yharnam assets already, so we'll just sort of, like, combine them
warp it, and we'll warp it a little bit.
Yeah, and, like, so, the exact nature of the priest is, like, we don't know because everything was shuffled around so many times, but... It looks like, you would have placated Kos by giving her a child back. In the form of the Yharnam stone.
And so does that imply that despite the fact that Kos is physically dead, that she's still aware as a Great One?
Yeah, because that's where the curse is coming from.
Or she has a power, anyway.
Yeah, well, that's why, like, there's that huge cracked kind of, like, sun looking over the nightmare. And then when you defeat... the orphan, and the orphan fades away, the sun disappears.
And there's a little shadow that comes out of Kos.
Yeah. Oh, well, I can go in, like, that whole thing, because, like, this is, again, a point of contention that confuses people, but, like, I'm pretty sure this is what it's supposed to be. The orphan of Kos that you fight, it's not like when they cut Kos open, there was a screaming naked man inside of her, with, like, a placenta sword. Like, scythe thing. What would have come out of Kos would have just been, like Ariana's baby, like a little slug thing. Right, and then they took that back to Bergenworth, and it died, and that's where that third chord that you get from Yosefka is from. So what you're fighting in the nightmare isn't actually, like, the orphan. It's like the orphan died and kind of, like... The nightmare itself is very heavily patterned after, like, Buddhist ideas of hell. And the lead up to the Hamlet, where there's that pathway with the river either side and those piles of stones. That's deliberately, like, very explicitly, if you know the hell, a reference to the hell that children who die before their parents are sent to.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to take that whole area as, like, this isn't, like, the orphan has died and within the Bloodborne cosmology, which is, like, it's not divine, but it's not holy material, has ended up in the equivalent of hell. It's the hell for children. Yeah. So what you're fighting is, like, the embodiment of, like, the orphan's rage. Like, the orphan has... Yeah.
An aspect of it that exists within this sub
you're fighting, like, the orphan's soul that has been, like, twisted and tortured for 20, 30 years in this, like, hell space, and it's become this monster.
That's why it's super powerful.
Yeah.
Because
And that's why, like, paradoxically, the way that you save him is to kill him. Because through killing him, you haven't actually killed the orphan. The orphan's already dead. But by killing him, you have, like, released him from the hell he's trapped in. So he just sort of fades,
That's why the priest says mercy for the poor wizened child.
Yeah, you killing him is a mercy, and he sort of fades away. And, like, and then him fading away is like, okay, now the orphan is no longer in turmoil, is no longer being tortured in this place. Kos is now placated. Like so the curse of Kos is lifted.
What's that?
It's exactly like
Murgo.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm pretty sure, that, like, they may have played it up a bit, because I think people didn't quite get what was going on with Murgo.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's a lot more clear what's happening with the orphan.
Yeah.
With the expeditional dialogue from the priest and everything like that.
And like if Maria's dialogue had remained in there, she very explicitly says like, I see like you killed Ludwig and you killed the patients in the hall, but like don't worry because that was salvation for them because they've been freed from this place that was tormenting them. So which would have prefigured what happened with the orphan.
And, sorry, a little side thing. Richie, I forget what it was, but you found the inspiration behind the priest in the Hamlet.
Oh, yeah. The priest in the Hamlet, the way he looks, it's very close to a thing called a bishop fish. That, I mean, you might know about this if you're into, like, weird stuff, but, basically a squid... a squid kind of looks like it's wearing a bishop's mitre.
Okay, let me just...
a popular, like, kind of false cryptid that people would make is they would dry out a squid or a stingray and, like, cut it up. So it kind of looked like a bishop, and they'd say, oh, this is actually, like, this is a fish bishop. And they're literally a bishop that lives in the sea, yeah.
Yeah, it looks quite freaky. Yeah. So it's a cryptid, essentially, yeah.
It's a cryptid, but it was like they were made kind of like, you know, those like people claim to have mermaids, and it was like a monkey's body sewn to a fish.
Yeah.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I posted.
So that's probably where the fish priest design comes from, with the very like elongated head.
And they've got like the big pointy heads.
Yeah, I posted the links in the chat. There's a sea monk, and then the next one is a bishop fish.
Yeah, they're both very similar. I'll show those on screen on the edit, but yeah, those are
cool.
Definitely what they're meant to be then. Yeah. And obviously the name works well as well, the bishop fish, because obviously he's the religious aspect of the town. So the orphan being dissected, is that lore from that piece of that statue that you find in the research hall where there's 3 men over a body being dissected? Is that what a lot of people interpret as a scene?
I didn't see it that way. But
no, I didn't either, but I think I've seen people mention that that's a scene of the autopsy.
I think, like, my take on it is that the central figure is Lawrence.
The one at the back with the big mitre.
The bearded guy with the mitre, that would be Lawrence. And then either side of that, you have, like, the Black Doctor and the White Doctor, which you see...
2 arms of the church.
Well, it mirrors like when you actually encounter it, because you go in and there is like Lawrence's skull is in the middle of the room, and then there's a Black and a White Doctor.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and like also when you encounter Lawrence's skull in the waking world, it's on the same altar. So it's like I pretty sure that bearded figure is supposed to be Lawrence, and it's like a symbolic representation of like there's Lawrence and there's the White Doctor and the Black Doctor, and then under there's a beast. They're like overseeing a patient, and then underneath that is the beast, and they're like keeping the beast at bay, like saving everyone in Yharnam. And then like there's a little I don't know what to call it. It's like they sort of reveal their hand, because the way that you activate that is you shove the eye into the head, which is like revealing that okay, that's what it looks like they're doing, but the real purpose of what they're doing is to get eyes in people's heads.
Yeah, then it's again what happened to the fishing hamlet is a searching for his eyes and things like that.
Yeah.
So the villagers are fish-like, and we could just take that to be a design thing. But in Innsmouth, they become that way because they crossbreed. So is the common assumption of you two, and I don't know if this is what you both believe, is it because the parasites came out of Kos and interacted with them in some manner that transformed them into these aquatic type beings?
That's how I take it, yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you think as well, Sin? Or do you think they're just fish people for this?
Either that, or they snacked on Kos and turned into fish people.
No, I think it's that, though.
Feasted
I think
on.
it's that they ate the parasites.
Oh, you think they ate the parasites? I was
and it
joking
transformed
about
them.
the Kos thing. What?
Yeah. No, I think they ate, because you can... What else are they
Well,
going to eat
fruits
there?
and
Because they've given
vegetables?
up fishing. And they have a giant... Where?
Well, we didn't visit the whole village. Maybe there's like a field to the side.
It's true. True.
Yeah. But, like, you can see that there's just barrels and barrels of slugs everywhere. And they also seem to... They have these, like... The lights in the village are actually slugs being burned like candles.
All right.
So they presumably... Yeah, they
use it for everything.
seem to subsist entirely off slugs.
And off the things that have come out of Kos. So that goes back to the cult being established around this corpse that's the life-giving thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, like, they're just basically, like, either dining on or living, like, with the parasites. Like, they're just becoming, like,
They have the
yeah.
symbiotic relationship with the parasites. in
Yeah,
essence.
and you can...
They
There's,
subsist
like,
off it.
the snail women as well. Like, they seem to be, like, priestesses that serve Kos, because you can see they're all lined up outside her. I assume the chanting women in the houses are those. You just don't see them. Because there's a whole lot of them
you just
lined
hear
up
them.
around Kos, and they're, like, in, like, a praying pose.
Yes.
And I'm guessing they, as a result of, like, being closer to Kos, they're sort of more transformed. They don't have legs anymore. They're like mermaids.
Yeah, and that'd be a desire thing, this village, presumably, to be closer to their god.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Another like aspect of like the Kos curse would be the monsters in the Nightmare Frontier as well, because they appear to be like a manifestation of like Kos's trauma in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The crawling white things, because they look like a smaller sort of warped version of Kos, and the way that they attack you is that they rear up and
True.
True. It looks like they've been cut open in the same way that Kos does, and within where the cut is, there's like messengers like reaching out like the orphan.
Yeah.
So it's like the horror that Kos went through sort of manifests as these creatures, in the same way that like Maria seems to be manifesting as the Winter Lanterns.
Yes. And do you think that this is just what happens in the Dreamlands, that manifestations of emotions and deep-seated feelings are brought into the physical...
Like I was saying, it's like a hell kind of place, and like the consciousnesses in there sort of shape it. So when you go to like the nightmare version of Yharnam, it's recognizably Yharnam, but everything is twisted and everything is like sinking into blood. Mm-hmm. And the beasts there, like they don't match up very well with beasts we see in the waking world. So like Ludwig is there, but we never see anything like Ludwig. When you talk about cleric beasts, he's a horse, and he has a second head that's like vomiting out like arcane energy, and that
second head kind of looks like the Lauren beast slightly. It's like a side on.
Yeah, and it's like got eyeballs in it and stuff, and it like. And then when you encounter, like, Lawrence in the Nightmare, he's a cleric beast, but he's made of fire. It's not like... Like, I remember talking about Lawrence there, and people being like, oh, he's on fire because he burned. And, like, you're just fighting his burned corpse. And it's like, no, his blood is fire. Like, he's not on fire. Like, he can vomit lava out. His whole body is, like, morphing into this, like, blood...
Lava.
Flame stuff. Yeah, so what's going on there is not, necessarily, like... It's like the consciousness is shaping it. So, like, Lawrence, I guess, because he's in this, like, state of, like, the blood has overtaken him and it's destroyed him, he's manifesting as, like, something where the blood is actually burning the body up.
Yeah.
And,
I like
Ludwig, like, going back to the Buddhist stuff, like, the way that Ludwig takes the form of a horse with kind of blue skin, that's a Buddhist demon. that tortures you in hell. So like Ludwig seems to see himself as that
kills
creature.
people over and over again, correct?
Yeah,
Like,
so Ludwig is seeing himself as that creature, so he's like
To
changing
be fair,
into that.
we never encounter Ludwig in the real world, so you can't say he didn't look like that to begin with.
Yeah, it's true. He may have looked like that.
It's true. There are other slightly different forms of beasts, I guess. Like you say, like Amelia's like a stag, I'd say. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's true that he could be a horse, or that it's gone more wild in the nightmare. That it's running more rampant, and so So the point of the nightmare then is this: what we see as the wrath of Mother Kos, and that in the center of this nightmare is this buried secret of the church, which is the reason for the whole thing existing.
Yeah, that's pretty. Like Simon lays it out pretty much like that. That once you've been
secret.
Yeah, once you've been marked as a hunter, like you're doomed to at some point give into blood drunkenness. When you give into blood drunkenness, you'll kind of lose your faculties, and then you'll just be taken to the nightmare, I guess, like by amygdala. But they describe it in the item descriptions as like there was one night where the hunters vanished, and it's not clear what happened. That like almost like there was like just overnight they all disappeared, and it's not clear what happened. So I don't know if that was like a bunch of amygdala showed up at once, or like it was something else, like Kos sort of manifested and took them or something. But
it's like the rapture.
Yeah.
They all just
some sort of rapture thing. And Simon's whole deal is like he knows that is his future because he's a hunter. One day he's gonna go blood drunk. He's gonna end up here. So his whole story is he's trying to get to the center of the nightmare so that he can end it all, so that he'll be free from it.
Yeah, he's trying to preemptively destroy it. But what he sees there is pretty shocking to him, though, isn't it? I don't think he's aware of what happens in the village, in fairness.
Yeah, he's called, he's like Simon the Seeker of Secrets, so he like knows something is there, but he's not sure what.
Yeah.
And
it's quite a shocking secret, this violation of the village.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we get there by artificial means. We essentially use an eye as a proxy to bring us there, so that the amygdala thinks that we're blood drunk, but we're not actually, which is why we're able to operate pretty well in there, because we're not a blood drunk hunter.
Yeah. Simon says like, "Oh, you've got your sanity intact, so you must have taken a wrong turn." So like he knows, like, okay,
we don't belong there.
You weren't snatched like these other people were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, before I move on from the curse aspect to what happens after Kos, is there anything else that either you'd like to add?
Well, we can talk about how like there's a cursed chalice in game that specifies like it lays it out. This is pre-DLC. It just says like curses are what happen when you make the Great Ones angry. They will curse you.
Yeah. And Kos, of course, being a great one, which is
Kos, yeah, and you interestingly, like it's a Tumeru chalice. So you find
does
that like
suggest that they also at some point.
Yeah, I think they did.
It's this cyclical thing that you see in not all FromSoft games, but most FromSoft games, that we're essentially repeating the mistakes of the Temerians.
Well, yeah, it's where and also like the people in Lauren and
and Lauren.
I guess like the giveaway is like the DLC kind of contextualizes it, but you can, when you're in the hamlet, if you look down, you can see the Hunter's Nightmare. You can also see the ship masts that you realize, the Nightmare Frontier is above me.
Yeah.
So it's like this stacked sort of universe, and like
it's like these pocket universes, I imagine, that just kind of sit around each other.
I think it's more like it's like the chronology thing you were talking about, where it's like these are just the order that they happened in. So like presumably somewhere above Nightmare of Mensis, there is like an earlier nightmare, and there's another nightmare above that, and it's just like it's going to keep going up for eternity.
Yeah. Because you can see, of course, the Nightmare of Mensis from Nightmare Frontier as well. Above, and in the distance, you can see the kind of spires of the castle or whatever is up there.
Yeah, and if you're in Mensis and you look down, you can see the monoliths of the Frontier. Yeah, so like presumably what's going to happen is like in however many like 100 or 1,000 years or whatever, there'll be another human civilization. They'll go down the same path, and then they will find what we know as the Hunter's Nightmare. And that will be their equivalent of the Nightmare Frontier. And then it'll just keep going and going and going.
And there could be a Yharnam Chalice dungeon or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll find like the Nightmare of Yharnam. And they'll like discover Yharnam, they'll discover everything that happened there, and then they'll repeat it, and it'll just go on and on for an eternity.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and like
it hurts your brain sometimes.
Yeah.
So going forward from Kos then, so Kos's dissection, the discovery of Kos, the violation of the fishing village, then directly leads on to the establishment of the research hall.
Well,
Or the research hall existed, but it directed in the way they researched.
I think it's more like the dissection of Kos happens, they go back to Byrgenwerth. Then, sometime later, like not an especially long time, but not the next day or something. Yeah. That's when, like, the tensions between Lawrence and Willem start sort of, like, rising, because Lawrence wants to proceed down a different path to Willem. That's when Lawrence is like, okay, I'm leaving. I'm starting my own...
schism happens, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, the research hall is Lawrence going, I'm going to start my own Byrgenwerth. Bye-bye. And he leaves, and that's what it is. So, it's like... It's not immediately, like, after the research hall. Not immediately after the Hamlet. It would be, like, sometime after the Hamlet. And he takes Maria and Gurman with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And presumably, like, Mikolash as well. Because Mikolash seems to be a Byrgenwerth guy.
Yeah, and then he goes with them, and then eventually starts his own school of thought, essentially. Which we spoke about earlier. And so, just the research hall then, and the establishment of the Healing Church, at this point, does that mean that they still believed that the Great Ones were linked to the ocean, and they hadn't yet fully uncovered the secrets that they'd find further in the Temerian
I guess,
labyrinths?
I don't think they have any chalices at this point.
Kos because is the first big thing.
we were talking earlier on like another thing that'll be on Sin and I's channel about the choir, and they specify with the choir that the East Chalice is the first thing that's been brought to the surface since Byrgenwerth.
For long.
Yeah, so like the Healing Church, it looks like they... The Old Yharnam situation, it looks like they wanted to get to Old Yharnam to use the chalice there to go underground.
Yeah.
But that looks like maybe they didn't have the chalice at that point, or they just didn't know about Old Yharnam. So they're still looking into the ocean.
Maybe they didn't understand what the chalices were at that point.
I think it's like... Yeah. I think
the chalice
it's
of
like...
Yharnam seems like a people's totem that they worshipped.
That's what I was getting at, because... Yeah. The Healing Church, like, they are outsiders to Yharnam. They're from, like, they're Bergen... Like, this is confusing, because the whole game, like, everywhere's very close together, basically, to make it so you don't have to walk for 3 hours to get anywhere. But, like,
Cathedral
Byrgenwerth...
town.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, no, but I'm thinking, like, Byrgenwerth is not Yharnam. It's a different city. The people there aren't Yharnamites. So... They show up in Yharnam, they don't know the ways of Yharnam. So at the point the research hall's built, they probably don't know that there's a chalice in Old Yharnam. Because it's like an old part of the town they haven't been to yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true.
So they probably, like, that's why they're all about the ocean at that point.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, going on, because they come to Cathedral Ward, establish the Healing Church, and then they begin their research immediately, let's say. And the early parts of that are this research into water, because the brain fluid item description says, in the early days of the Healing Church, Great Ones were linked to the ocean, and so they would imbibe water, listening for the howl of the sea. So it's not necessarily wrong, because I can't remember her name, the blood saint that's in the research hall. Adelaine. She does succeed in that type of research.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, it looks like that the hall leads to, like we were talking about, like, they're doing things in the hall that just look like earlier versions of what they end up doing in the present. So, like, again, when you're talking about, like, research, like, even if a research project, like, quote-unquote fails, it's not really a failure because you at least learn something from it.
Yes.
So, like, research hall... did not go very well. It all fell apart, and the patients all rebelled, and things went wrong. But
99% of them all died, probably, I'd say.
Yeah, but you can tell that, like, in the present, they're still screwing around with, like, celestials that sort of look like a more advanced version of what they were doing in the hall. They have, like, the big swollen heads, and they're still inhabiting the same space. They're still experimenting with lumen flowers, so...
Mm-hmm. It's an evolution of their ideas.
Yeah, and the choir are all obsessed with phantasms and slugs, and that's what Adeline's rune does. It makes you, like, have this symbiotic relationship with the slugs, so...
I think the understanding that I have of it is that the water link was a very immature way of just saying that the Great Ones were linked to the water, when in reality what they're linked to defies maybe our understanding, and that the water with Kos was just another manifestation of the way in which the Great Ones can exist.
The way they explain the water is that, like, they would listen in their head for, like, the howling of the sea, like the water churning around, and they would be able to discern voices from that. And that's what Adeline ends up doing, because she can, she's like, when she turns into just like a blob, she's like, I can see your voice. I can, like, the knowledge is in my head now.
And she gets the milkweed rune from that. She envisions that in her head.
Yeah, and, like, that's, like, it works. You turn into a blob, and then that lets you turn into a mushroom, but, like, there's results. So,
yeah, I agree.
That's kind of what the third chords, like, Willem is sort of doing the same thing, though, when you encounter him, because, like, what Willem, like, I guess the impression a lot of people get from Willem is that he's just, like, senile, or he's just, like, his brain burned out.
But he's inside his own head, right? He's not...
Well, okay, this is another cultural thing that I think gets kind of lost, because the word they use for the place Willem is lunarium, right? And, like, a lunarium it's technically a real thing, but it's not what Willem's on. The word they use for that in the Japanese script is it's the tsukimi platform, which is like an actual thing, a tsukimi platform. The idea behind tsukimi is moon viewing. So the idea behind tsukimi is that you would sit facing the moon, preferably above a large body of water, and just meditate on the moon. And just, like, so that's what he's doing. He's, like, zoned out because he's focused on the moon. He's focused on, like, the reflection of the moon in the water. And there's a whole, like, fable, I guess, about, like, the moon and the water being, like, this is the representation of enlightenment. Because...
there's also the fact that the moon obviously doesn't have effect on tidal conditions and the movement of the oceans and stuff as well.
There's a very specific, like, parable about a sage who talks about the moon and the water, and he says, like, the moon to us appears to be like it's this huge celestial body that we could never comprehend, but if you look at the moon and the water, it's like the whole of the moon is held within this tiny thing of water. And you have to think about enlightenment that way. You have to think about, like, if this tiny lake can hold the moon, then, like, I as a person can hold, like, the cosmos inside me. And that's what Willem is doing.
He's taking
the idea, of, like, looking into water and, like, communing, like, he kind of still does that. The difference is that the Healing Church also bring the blood into the mix, and that's why it goes, like, absolutely horribly wrong in a way that Bergenworth kind of doesn't.
And he recognises this very early on, that it's a shortcut to disaster, essentially, the blood aspect.
Yeah, he's basically saying, like again, this is a thing that when the game came out, there was kind of like, the assumption was, okay, Willem is saying, no, blood bad, only insight, and then Lawrence is saying, no, blood good, insight bad. But because the DLC sort of cemented that, because what happens is, like, what are they doing in the research hall? They're trying to get insight. Like, the schism is not what you think it is. The schism is that Willem is basically saying, slow down.
Slow and steady wins the race type thing, whereas the church...
He's basically saying, this blood is still the key to enlightenment, blood is the key to evolution, but you're not ready to use it yet. And because Lawrence is just beasts. Like,
we're still beasts.
He's basically saying we're not ready. Yeah.
That reflection of our immaturity as a species is reflected when we turn into beasts, when we use it, because we're not ready
that's
for
what that note is saying. That's like, evolution without courage will be our ruin, which is like a weird way of phrasing it, but it's like, we can evolve whenever we want, but we're not ready yet. And if we try, it will be completely destroyed. Yeah. And, like, it's just like, it's the classic story of, like, Willem is the wise master who's, like, warning his student, like, don't do this. And then Lawrence, who's, like, the younger, more ambitious man, is saying, no, I'm ready. Don't tell me what to do, old man. I can handle this on my own. And it just, like... And, I mean, it fails for both of them because it blows up in Lawrence's face with the healing church, but then with Willem is so obsessed with, like, I've got to get it 100% absolutely perfect, that he just sort of, like, withers away into nothing.
He fades into insignificance, essentially, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he never does anything because he's too frightened to actually attempt it. Yeah.
Yeah, what's... yes, definitely an interesting point. What I'll kind of end with, because I realise that we're getting to the kind of the end mark of it, is as a suggestion, is reading back into the brain to the milkweed rune aspect. It says this: those who take this oath become lumen wood that peers towards the sky. Phantasms guide us and lead us to further discoveries. Does this mean that in the research hall, this is where the realization came that they needed to stop looking at the water and they needed to look elsewhere? Because that milkweed rune, let's just say that was the discovery of all those people dying in the research hall. And that line moves very distinctly away from water. It moves towards the sky and further discoveries. So is that what changed their approach?
I'd say that it was. Like I was saying, the research hall was a quote-unquote failure, but it still produced something, and that something is... we need to look into Lumenwood, we need to look into phantasms, and we need to look into the way that they're connected to what's in the sky, what's above us. And, again, like, who ends up taking over that area? It's the choir, whose whole deal is looking at the stars.
Staring at the sky.
And communing with the augurs of Ebrietas and communing with the call beyond. So
it's quite clear it's born from that initial research.
Yeah.
Okay. Sen, have you got any further comments?
Well, that's about it. Stop looking at the sea and look into Lumenwood.
Exactly.
And Celestials type.
That's the good things that came from Massacre of the Hamlet. Alright. So thanks both for joining me.
Thank you for inviting us on.
Yes. And if you didn't know, we did a podcast just before this that'll be on Sinclair Lore. It's about the choir, so I'd highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah, good companion piece.
Yeah, it's a good companion piece. We cross over a lot of the same subjects, especially when it comes to the research of looking at the sky. And so, just thanks to both my guests for being on. It's been an honour recording with you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah,
and in general, check out Sinclair Lore and JSF. Both the channels, I'll link below.
Thank you.
But for now, thanks guys.